when people ask me to speak, they always ask me to give them a title of what I'm going to speak about. But I never know any more than you know what you're going to speak about with your friend before you meet them. So whatever I tell them is not the truth. But they want something. So the first thing that comes, I give it to them. And then they say to me, well, can you tell me what the evening will be about? So the first thing that comes, I give it to them. And then I wait. And sometime before the evening or the day begins, things start coming. I don't know from where they come, but they don't cost anything. They come by themselves. And so before I came to Prague with my fiancée Deborah, Vaclav, yes, my friend Vaclav who invited me, I said, where will the evening be? And he said, the University of Economics. And at first I thought, University of Economics? And I waited, and about 2 or 3 days ago, all of a sudden I realized why I'm here. Economics is about economy. Economy is about how easily something can occur. Can something occur with no work? That's optimal economy, efficiency. Now, I imagine in school, people tell you the ideas, the theories of economy. But if you want to know about real economy, go into nature. You'll see that everything is working free. Nothing is working on anything. The trees are not trying to grow. None of the animals are trying to become enlightened. Nobody's working on anything. And so we can learn a great deal about that. And if you speak to a physicist about the nature of reality, they will tell you that at a fundamental level, everything is just energy. And if you ask them, what is the name of this energy? They will tell you, oh, that's the energy of light. Everything that we experience as solid is actually the vibration known as light. And no one knows what light is. Because light is invisible. You cannot see light. What you experience today and yesterday is brightness. Light is something totally different. And we'll speak about that. But fascinating behavior of light is that no matter which way light is moving, and no matter what is in its way, light always gets there in the fastest time, the shortest distance. In other words, light defines economy, efficiency. And that is what this universe is made of. So why is it important to speak about this? Because I imagine many of you came, whether you are involved with the mindfulness group, or perhaps you have an interest in some aspect of consciousness, You'd like to know, most people, what do I have to do? Do I have to meditate? Do I have to be more present? We use all of these terms, but we have no idea what these things are, because the terms actually have nothing to do with the state. When you go to a restaurant here and you see on the menu it says Apfelstrudel, the menu is not the Apfelstrudel. If you eat the menu, it's not the same as the Apfelstrudel. So the terms that we use have little or anything to do with the actual experience. The experience cannot be described. So I'm not sure what will be shared this evening, but what I would like to suggest is that you don't believe anything I say. Don't agree with what comes here, and don't disagree. Just notice where it takes you inside. I was originally trained as an eye doctor, and I did this for many years, and also I was a vision scientist, which I'm still involved in. But my real interest is life, because I came to discover that we all go to school and we learn how to make money and we learn how to be successful and we learn all of these things, but few of us are successful at living. We hear that the two most important things are health and happiness, but so many of us are not healthy. And most of us are only happy if we win the lottery. If something happens on the outside, if we fall in love, then we're happy. If we make an A on the test, 100 on the test, we're happy. But if things on the outside are not exactly what we want, we're not so happy. And so for me, it became very important to try to uncover what it is that allows us to feel content in life. Content regardless of what's happening. If it's sunny, it's nice, and if it's cloudy, it's also fine. So I came to this place through many, many, many experiences in my life. One of the major ones occurred 42 years ago. I was practicing as an eye doctor for a few years, and I wore glasses like many of you. And I was meditating. This was in the 1970s. I started meditating in 1971. And so this was 1976, and I was interested in seeing if I could do something to naturally improve my vision. And so I was exercising my eyes and doing all kinds of things, and everything was helping a little bit. And then one day I sat down in my house and I took off my glasses and I sat down and I began to meditate. And somewhere in the middle of this experience, everything became clear. I don't know exactly what happened, but even though my eyes were closed, I could see myself inside the room, and everything was crystal clear. And everything was quiet. And there were no questions about anything. Everything was clear. Not just optically clear, but everything was clear. When I opened my eyes from this meditation, the world was clear. And I went to my office without my glasses on, and my driver's license said I needed to have glasses to drive, but I didn't put them on because everything was clear. And I went to my office and I examined my eyes, and I was seeing 300% better. But then when I checked my prescription to see what had changed, my eyes didn't change at all. I was seeing 300% better, but my eyes didn't change at all. How can that possibly be? I was trained as a doctor and scientist that we see with our eyes. But the eyes didn't change, but something could still see very well. What I discovered is that we don't see from the eyes. Something else is seeing. Now, if this experience had occurred for 5 minutes, you would say, that's a miracle. But this experience has now lasted 42 years. And I'm 70 years old now. And I don't use any glasses for anything. Why am I sharing this with you? It was a life-changing event for me. But what it really signifies is how something very, very big can happen like that, without doing anything, without wanting anything, without practicing, without working, with optimal economy, super efficiency. Sometimes people have terrible illnesses like cancer, and they have something called a spontaneous remission. They had the cancer, and now they don't have it. And no one knows how it came or how it went. So I experienced something like this with my eyes. What it left me to realize is things do not work the way we think. They work, but it has nothing to do with our ideas. And this is very, very important, because in life, what is important to discover is truth. And there's a difference between truth and true. What is true for you in this moment may not be true tomorrow. But truth is always there. Truth is not changing. If something is continually changing, it's not truth. So in the Bible, Jesus was quoted as saying, "The truth shall set you free." My sense is that he was speaking about this truth that sometimes occurs, like happened to me 42 years ago, I don't know how, and something just opens up. Something becomes very, very clear. And so, since that time, life has taken me in many, many different directions. And since that time, I don't rehearse anything. Do you understand what I mean? You know how most of us spend so much of our day thinking about what we're going to do? and practicing over and over and over again to make sure it comes out a certain way. Imagine what your life could be if that was happening much, much less. If maybe there was thinking going on, but you weren't so attached to it. So I noticed the organization that was involved in helping to make this evening is called the Mindfulness Club, yes? So I imagine that has something to do with the mind. And we want to do so many things with the mind. But maybe there's something else that we have not noticed before. So all of you are aware when you're having thoughts, right? Yes? When you are worrying inside, all of you know this? How do you know? If you are noticing that you are having thoughts going on, or you're worried about something, how do you know that the thoughts are going on? Come on, some of you must know these. Yes? What's that? But how do you know the thoughts are there?
Our consciousness is observing them. Our consciousness is observing them.
So she said, our consciousness is observing them. So something is observing it. And we say our consciousness. Does that mean your consciousness? Or does it mean our consciousness?
Could be all of us.
Could be ours. So, what I discovered years ago is something is noticing everything all the time. There was a very famous American writer named Ralph Waldo Emerson. And Emerson said something very beautiful about this. He said there's a fundamental principle underlying all things. In other words, there's something that's fundamental to everything that exists. He said it's a simple, undescribed, undescribable presence residing silently within us. And then he said, we are not to do, but to let do, not to work, but to be worked upon. So what Emerson is saying is the source, our true source, are not the thoughts that you're aware of. It's the silent essence, the field of awareness that is noticing this, but never says anything. The awareness does not speak. So if you hear a voice, it isn't it. And so much of what we speak about today are things you can do with the mind to create what you want and all of these different things, but I've never actually I've never had that experience. People are saying, well, if you choose a certain way, you can get whatever you want. But I've never had this experience. I don't know anyone who's ever had this experience. I've never read about anyone who's had this experience. And all the people in the world that we are all aware of that awoke, whether they're Jesus or Moses or some gurus from India or great people that did great things, the only thing they have in common is they had very difficult lives. So if you're having some difficulty in your life, you're in good company. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong. Our awakening has nothing to do with getting anywhere. It has nothing to do with becoming enlightened, whatever that means. Maybe it has more to do with being delighted, enjoying life, helping people, sharing things when they come up. We live in a world where there's so much competition that we forget how beautiful it is when we are cooperating. So, my life is about planting seeds of goodness. It's really gotten very simple. I notice that every day I get so many opportunities to say thank you, to say I appreciate you, to say I love you, to help someone. Maybe they need money, maybe they need me to pick up something for them, maybe they need me to hold their hand and help them into the bus. We all get many opportunities every single day to experience caring. This may be the most important thing. The real awakening is not about whether you meditate or not. It's not about whether you can sit cross-legged. It's not about whether you're a vegetarian or vegan or you eat whatever. It has nothing to do with any of these things. It's very simple. It's just being who you are, just the way you are. What exactly does that mean? So let's go back to the beginning, when we were all born. When we came out of our mothers, whether you are in Prague, or in Indonesia, or in Western Africa, or in Russia, or anywhere else, when the baby comes out, they bring the baby to the mother, and the mother brings the baby to her left breast, the one right over the heart. Now, what's interesting is if you measure the mother's heart and the baby's heart, they're different. But the moment they get within a certain distance, the two heartbeats superimpose and they become one heartbeat. Now, in science, we call that bonding. That's when the child bonds with their mother. That's also the moment of a heart-to-heart connection. That establishes that feeling that we call love. And it's maybe the most important thing in our life, because after that moment, we spend our entire life looking for that feeling again. Right? Isn't that the feeling? You're looking for that person, be it a friend or a teacher or a lover or a husband or a wife, where you feel, I'm home. That happens just at the moment of birth. That moment is also responsible for the things we know by heart. Do you have this expression here? Knowing it by heart? So in America, it's a common expression, and they say, oh, if they were speaking about me, they would say, Jacob knows it by heart. It doesn't mean that I memorized it. It means that something knows it, but I don't know how it knows it. It's just there. Now, I'll tell you something else very interesting about babies. Babies don't know that they're babies. A baby doesn't know whether it's a boy or a girl. It doesn't know whether the skin is light or dark or someplace in between. It doesn't know whether it's Christian, Muslim, Jew, or anything else. A baby has no preferences. The reason that is because we are born, we are hardwired, come in. We are hardwired for oneness. Let me see if I can explain. Nice to see you. We are hardwired for oneness. A baby doesn't know that it is not its mother or its father. A baby is one with everything. Isn't this what the Mindfulness Club is really about? And what I'm sharing with you is we're born this way. There is nothing to do. This is the way we come into the world. And then something happens. We call it conditioning, education. When a baby cries, it never cries because it wants to upset you. When crying comes from a baby, it comes as a response to discomfort. It's totally natural. The baby is not doing anything. Crying is just what the organism is doing. But if mother or father says, shh, shh, we're inside the cinema, you cannot cry in here. When the baby hears this over and over again, it receives a signal that what is natural is not normal. And when natural is confronted with normal, something inside starts to watch everything that I'm feeling. So children, when they have to go to the toilet, they just go. Until we say, oh, no, you have to wait until you get to the toilet. And so they learn how to hold everything. That's the beginning of this activity inside. that we call thinking. And we're led to believe that thinking is something very special. It's how we evolved. And we are more evolved than the animals and the plants. But now we know from science that all animals have consciousness. And so do all plants. And animals have their own thinking process just like you. And so do plants. A plant knows the difference between a drop of water from rain and the little steps of a little animal that are going to take a bite of its leaves. And when it feels the animal, it releases stress chemicals just like we do. So it's important to examine what we call thinking. Is most of our thinking a creative process? Or is most of it actually just worrying? Is most of it rehearsing inside in hopes that I'll say the right thing? Or I'll remember the answers to the test? Or I'll say the right thing to my boyfriend or my girlfriend? Just look at how much of our life is consumed with this process inside of worry. What would life be like if there was less of this? Now, very often when we are told about meditation, we are sometimes given the impression that with meditation you can quiet the mind. But you will not quiet the mind any more than you will quiet your heart. Perhaps the purpose of meditation is to notice. To notice that you are the noticer. Not the activity of the mind, but that which is noticing. You can spend your whole life trying to quiet your mind, and at best you'll quiet it for a couple of minutes and then it'll start again. But if you realize that you are not the activity of the mind, you are the observer of this activity, and if you realize this many times, after a while this activity can go on, but something else moves you forward. I'll give you an example. We will leave Prague on Wednesday and go to Oslo, where I have to speak at a scientific conference for about 5 hours. And usually before I'm asked to speak, especially in front of a scientific group, I notice the same thing that I noticed my whole life when I was going through school. I noticed the worrying happen. But I am not the worrying, and I am not the worrier. Thank you for coming. It happens, but it's in the background. And so even though the worry is going on, something keeps taking me to the edge of the cliff. Something keeps taking me closer and closer until the moment that the person who's introducing me says, Dr. Jacob Liberman, and I come up, and then a miracle happens. It starts to happen by itself. And it's very humbling because it's really miraculous. And what I want to share with you is to consider the possibility that your entire life is this way. That it is all actually happening by itself. It's very important that we begin to look at all of the things that we were told and ask a very simple question. Is this true? When I went to school, I had difficulties with reading, and I thought there was something wrong with me. And the reason I went to become a doctor was I imagined if you become a doctor, you can't be stupid, because I didn't think I was smart. And after I got one doctorate, I got a second doctorate. And one day I realized that getting degrees has nothing to do with our wisdom. It's not unimportant. It's wonderful that you have this opportunity to be in this lovely institution and learn from other people. But what other people have written about or tell you may not be truth. It may only be true. As a scientist, I published research studies. I created instruments that I took through the Food and Drug Administration in the US. So I've done all of these things. And of course, in science, we look at the research as being facts. They're not facts. They're theories. There's almost nothing that I learned when I went to school in the 60s and early 70s that's true today. So most everything that we believe is just true for a short period of time. Do you know what a thesaurus is? A thesaurus is a book that you put a word and it tells you all the other words that mean the same thing. And it also tells you all the words that mean the opposite. Put in the word belief and you'll see it means the same as idea, thought, theory, concept. You know what the opposite of belief is? Truth. Truth. I was taught in school certain things about vision and seeing. And then I had a miraculous experience 42 years ago, and all of a sudden I knew something was absolutely different. And sometimes just sharing this with my patients allowed them to have the same experience, just because they knew it was possible. I've had many such experiences in my life. I spent years working with children that had learning problems, thousands of them. They all went to doctors and psychologists, and they had a diagnosis. There was something wrong with their attention or their brains or this or that. And when I worked with them, I discovered they were geniuses. They just learned in a different way. And I had to find ways that allowed them to discover how to live without effort. Do you ever try to remember something and it doesn't come, and in America we say it's on the tip of my tongue. but it doesn't come until you stop thinking. Maybe everything would come if we stop thinking. Now, that's an easy thing to say. It's not so easy for it to happen because we've spent our whole life conditioned to think about everything, to worry about everything. But consider this. I studied the human body. That's what you do as a doctor. None of us control our hearts. None of us breathe on our own. Something is breathing us. None of us control our blood pressure. Maybe we can do it for a few minutes, but that's about it. None of us control the release of hormones. Actually, we don't control anything in our bodies. Nothing. It all works by itself. Now look outside yourself. None of us wake up early in the morning and then remind the sun to come up. None of us tell the moon to come up at night, so we should have light. No one tells the oceans how to move or the seasons to change. All of this occurs without us. We control nothing in here and nothing out there. And we think we're controlling our lives. There's something else going on. And the reason I'm sharing this with you is to perhaps remind you of something that you know, but maybe we forgot. Because we all forget these things. And I want to share with you things that are possible in life. Most people, as they get older, they get old. And there's a possibility of getting wiser. Not getting more tired, getting more excited. This is just as possible. So, what I'm sharing with you is that what I've discovered in my 70.5 years of living is that what we think about life has nothing to do with life. There's actually something else that's totally possible. And if we're very fortunate, something can wake up and notice things in a way you never saw them before. And this is very, very powerful because we were led to believe that things change if you do them over and over and over and over again. But actually, that's not what creates change. Awareness is curative. When we see something in a new way, everything begins to change instantaneously. Your brain begins to rewire itself instantaneously. It's very, very powerful. And it's just about seeing. Not seeing the eye chart, about seeing deeply into things. You know how sometimes you get I don't know how many of you have had children. How many of you have had children? Okay, so you know how sometimes when your child was young, maybe you're at home, you're cooking, whatever, and all of a sudden you get a feeling about your child, and you pick up the telephone and you call them and they say, "Oh, Mommy, I was just thinking about you." What did you see that caused you to pick up the phone? Now, when we think about those events, we call them coincidences or synchronicities, and we think, oh, they occur occasionally. They're actually occurring all day long. We are continually being guided through our whole life. There's an intelligence in this universe that moves everything. It moves the planets around the sun. It moves the seasons. It causes the oceans to change. It beats our heart. It breathes our body. It controls our blood sugar, our hormones. And that same intelligence controls everything. Now, if you're a religious person, you can call the intelligence God. If you're a spiritual person, you can say it's consciousness. If you're a scientist, you can say it's the Big Bang. It doesn't make any difference. It's none of these things. All I'm saying is there's a force in the universe that is moving everything, including us. And when we allow that to occur, we find that our whole life is guided. For instance, a tree is guided to grow by the sun. Interestingly enough, the same energy of light that guides a tree to grow also tells your body when to wake up, when to go to sleep, when you have to use the toilet, when you need to eat, when you're creative. All of these things are happening because all of the cells of our body have eyes that are designed to detect and respond to light. So we think light is only something the eyes experience. But the trillions of cells in our body all have eyes. They all are responding to light. And light is telling every cell in every second what it has to do so that the inside of your body and Mother Nature are dancing harmoniously. And it doesn't take anything for you to do for this to happen. All of our doing actually interferes with the process. But even the interference is important, because without the interference, we wouldn't even be here today speaking about this. So, what I'd like you to consider is everything in your life is actually occurring by itself. When you're walking down the street and all of a sudden something grabs your attention, maybe it's a very handsome young man, or maybe it's a beautiful girl, or maybe it's a lovely building, or maybe it's a car coming, or a tram and you have to stand back. When those things catch your eye, you don't have to think about what to do. Something automatically moves you. When the tram is coming and something notices it, you move back. And when you see someone that really grabs your attention, you have to go there. What I'm sharing with you is this is all happening automatically. When we begin to recognize how much of our life is occurring automatically, then we begin being more and doing less. And when I say that we're doing less, you may think that I'm just sitting at home all day watching the television. That's not what I mean. See, the mind says we're either doing or we're not doing. And they're the opposite. I'm not speaking about either one of those. I'm speaking about our natural state, which is here, which is ready for everything and anything in any given moment. It's awake, it's aware, it's relaxed, but at any moment it can go this way or this way. This morning we were walking across the bridge where you have thousands of tourists. And no one is looking where they're going, and they're all taking pictures. And as Deborah and I were walking, I noticed I didn't ever have to think about which way to walk. My eyes automatically noticed where there was a hole. And it took me there, and it took me there, and it took me there. And I said to Deborah, oh, this reminded me when I used to play American football. And they would give me the ball, and something just followed my eyes. And it took me in the area of least resistance, economy. Economy. So what I'm sharing with you is this happens by itself. This happens totally by itself, and we cannot think well enough to do it anywhere as good as it happens by itself. So people say, well, how are great discoveries made? We have to think about them and so on. And I remember when Albert Einstein was being interviewed, and the journalist said to him, how did you discover the theory of relativity? And Einstein started laughing, and he said, that came to me when I was playing piano. Something inspired him to look in a new direction. Then he spent hours and hours and hours expanding this concept, but that wasn't doing. That was excitement. If you look at your life, you'll notice that all the interesting things that come to you that you say, I had a great idea, actually didn't come from you at all. They came to you free of charge. We call it inspiration. It inspires us to move in a certain direction. And it comes in the middle of the night, or when we're sitting in a restaurant. All of a sudden something comes and I say, oh my gosh, and I start writing it down. And that inspiration is followed by implementation. I start to make it in the world, but the making of it is not doing. It's just the natural response of falling in love with something, whether it's a person or a new discovery. I have, over the years, developed different instruments to be used by therapists and doctors and so on. They all came by themselves. Just had this, wow, something came to me. I don't know where it came from. And it's not important where it came from. All I'm sharing with you is these things come to us all day long. They come to us. And if we notice them, we notice that they move us. They move us to respond to them. So, I've shared for a while. Now it's your turn. What do you feel about some of these things? Do you have questions or comments or anything at all? I think it would be fun if we could have a conversation about this that would be meaningful to you. So, what I'm asking you is, if you ask a question, ask something that's really important for you. Not so much about a theoretical question, but maybe something in your life, a real experience, something that would be important for you. There's someone there that's smiling. I think she's ready.
My thoughts.
Yeah, I would like to know, hello, I'm Veronica, nice to meet you, how we can see the truth without the filters, without our parents and comments from our parents and everything. Where is the truth? How we can see it?
So the question is, how can we see the truth? Or how do we notice what is truth and what is true? We've spent our whole life seeing everything through our ideas of what's possible, what's not possible, what's good, what's bad, what's right, what's wrong. We see everything through those filters. And so what we see is only part of the picture. Truth is something that comes to us rather than from us. When I just spoke about something inspiring me, that's truth. It doesn't come from me. It's not something I'm thinking about. It's something that all of a sudden it comes. I'll give you an example. Yesterday morning, at 5:30 in the morning, I woke up and I had a dream. And the dream was about an old friend of mine. He's 85 years old. And his wife is about 80, and she has not been very well. And in the dream, I don't remember all the details, but the dream was about that she didn't want to live any longer. And I woke up and I couldn't go back to sleep, and I sent him an email, just, how are you doing? How is your wife? And so on. And I didn't hear back anything, which is strange. But what I'm sharing with you is, you can just say, that was just a dream. And maybe it was just a dream. But very powerful things come to us in the night. So it comes, I just follow it. I don't say, it's just a dream. I just follow it, and it moved me to see where this takes me. Let's see, it was yesterday, we were out during the day with Vaclav, and we had to take a tram, and I said, we have 3 more tram rides, right? 3 more stops. And he said, how did you know? I said, I don't know. It just came. It had nothing to do with me. None of these things have anything to do with us. We're just like an apple tree. that's designed to make apples, except some of you may become financial experts, and others of you may start businesses, and others of you may discover new things, new technologies. We each have a purpose for being here. And usually our purpose are the things we love. In America, we say the things we know by heart. So, I don't know why I'm standing here before you today, sharing. But this takes absolutely no effort for me. It's very easy, and it touches me very deeply because I don't know how this is all happening. And I don't have to think about it, or work at it, or prepare it, or do a PowerPoint. I don't even know how to do a PowerPoint presentation. So what I'm sharing is each of us has a reason for being, and you'll know what that is because it makes you smile, it makes you feel wonderful. And what guides us when we're on track with that is what truth is. And it moves us. Did you ever see, do you know what a ventriloquist is? Sometimes you see a person in a show, they have a little, it looks like a man or a woman, and it's on strings, it has strings. And the person is doing like this, but the little person is talking. Yes? We're all like that dummy, and there's a big ventriloquist that's speaking through us. Now, I know that may sound funny to you, but I'm absolutely sure about that. I know you think I'm speaking to you, but something is communicating something to you, and it just happens to be coming through here. And it wouldn't make a difference if it was coming through anyone else. And that's what our life is about. Whatever our purpose is, something will move through us. Whether it is the purpose of an apple tree to make apples, or to speak in front of a group, or to discover something, doesn't make any difference. Yes?
I've had a way of thinking about, let's say, this purpose you mentioned, which is like what you are supposed to do, you don't choose yourself.
Right.
Like your job, for example, if you are lucky enough, your job will choose you.
Yes.
And I felt like I was one of the crazy lunatics because many people around me were always saying, I chose this, I chose that, I chose this, until I heard on television an interview of apparently someone who's a famous clown. I was not really listening, but at some stage I started to listen because he said, I'm so happy that this job chose me. And then I saw this happen with other people as well.
Yeah.
So I'd like to know if you would have any comments about this.
So what he said is that the things that we're involved in the world choose us. That's exactly my experience. That is exactly my experience. From the time when I was 6 months old, I stood up by myself and I started walking. I started walking at 6 months old. My mother wrote about it. Now, I don't know why this occurred. And then I started running. And I was running all the time when I was small. I was always excited about life. But I didn't read so much in school, and I thought something was wrong with me, and so then first I went to school to become an eye doctor, and I did that, and then I got a second doctorate. And this was all fine, and it took me exactly where I needed to go. But then I realized that was actually never me, even though it found an interesting way to bring me to where I am today. And it brought me back to the same person I've always been. I'll tell you what I mean by that. I live in Maui, Hawaii. A lovely place you should visit sometime. And I was born on an island. I was born in Cuba, in Havana, Cuba. And when I was in first grade, they took pictures of all the students in the class. And this was a private school where everyone wore a uniform. Everyone had the same outfit, the same colors and everything. And in this picture, it's very interesting. All the kids are wearing the same outfit. Their hands are on their desks like this, very serious. And in the middle of all this is this little boy standing with a big smile, wearing a Hawaiian shirt. That's who I am today. The same little boy. Life took me through all of these different places to bring me back to where I started. That's what our awakening is. To realize that, one, there's absolutely nothing wrong with us. Nothing wrong with us. And when we realize and begin to just accept ourselves exactly the way we are, then we begin to accept the world exactly the way it is. And what's interesting is when I was a doctor, they said that disease was contagious. If you had a sickness, you could give it to other people. But I discovered that wellness is even more contagious. That if you're excited about life, this is really makes people excited also. Questions? Yes.
Hello. I wanted to ask you, at one moment you mentioned that also we can follow the flow or we can intervene, and that it is something that took us to where we are now. So I would like to ask more about the intervenence, if we can do that, and what happened in dance, and why did you say, it kind of sounded it's also good.
What was the last thing you said?
That it sounded that to intervene with the flow is also good.
Yes. It's not good or bad. It's all part of the journey. So, as I look back at my life, I realize that I often speak about vision, but in a very different way than an eye doctor would speak about vision. But it was important for me to study that so I could come to this new understanding, a deeper understanding. I was a vision scientist, so I spent years researching light, therapeutic uses of light. That was extremely important to allow me to realize that light is the exact same thing as life. But I wouldn't have come to this understanding without having that experience. So there's nothing wrong with anything that is occurring or has occurred. All these things bring us to this moment. I remember I was speaking to a group, and many of this was all men, this group, and many of the men there had drank a lot of alcohol for many, many years. And they had gone through a program called Alcoholics Anonymous. Maybe you're familiar with it. And so this one man was describing himself, and he said, I spent 30 years of my life as a drunk. And he said it, and he used some other words which I won't repeat. And I said to him, was there any benefit from those years when you consumed a lot of alcohol? Hell no, he said. He says, I don't know what you mean. I said, was there any benefit to the 30 years when you were drinking a lot? And he said, I don't think so. And I said, well, what brought you here? And all of a sudden, he started crying. And all of a sudden, he realized that those 30 years that he was hiding were actually the 30 years that brought him to his awakening. So even the things that, as you say, we do with the mind and so on, all these are part of the journey we call life. Anyone else? Yes?
Hi, I would like to ask about your experience.
I'd like to ask again about your experience with children, and what view do you have for either parenting or people who work with children? Of course, I somehow also do believe that even our children choose us, but how do we interfere without putting too much conditioning? Also, you mentioned that there's something that probably stops us not running under the tram, but would a 3-4-year-old stop without us interfering? Thank you.
It's natural for parents to always look after the children. They're connected to our kidneys. So when we see the child going into a place that's dangerous, we must go to get them. So this is totally natural. It's totally natural whether you're a person or whether you're a bear or whether you're a lion. You will protect your children. As far as what to do, just love them, which is what you do anyway. And I said earlier that all the people in history that have accomplished great things, that have made big discoveries, that have awoken in their lives, they all went through a great deal of difficulty. You know, there's a certain time of the year that flowers grow, right? And you plant flowers in the ground? Yes? They do that here? And what do you put on the ground to make the flowers grow? What is that name? In America, we call it shit. Manure from the animals, right? And this is what makes the flowers grow. This is also what makes us grow. The shit of life, the difficulties, that's the real yoga. That's what stretches us. We don't know the limit of our heart until the heart is broken, open. We don't know the limit of our feeling until we lose someone that we love. So, no one is going to escape getting sick in their lifetime, or losing their parents, or losing someone they love dearly, or maybe having a divorce, or losing a boyfriend or a girlfriend. Everyone will experience these things. There's no way of avoiding them. And even though they are painful, and God knows I've had many of them, we grow tremendously from these things. But we will never know that when it's happening. And I only share this with you because I've gone through many dark periods of my life. I've had many of those experiences. And you know what panic attacks are? Yes? I spent years with that. So what I'm sharing with you this evening are not things I've read about. They're things that have come to me in the course of my life. You have to see whether they have any meaning for you. One of the most important things I can share with you is follow your guidance. That's the only thing you know that is truth for you. Follow your guidance. If something I say really resonates very deeply for you, it's only because it's already your truth. When we read a book, it only lets us know something we already know. If we don't know it, we don't even see it. So, if I shared something this evening and something inside starts to smile, you already know that, and it just reminds you of that. And we remind each other of these things all day long. Anyone else? Yes.
So, my question is about. So, you mentioned babies don't know what their skin color is or their gender is.
Right.
And I completely agree. And as we grow up, we take the concepts of society as our own.
Right.
And if we're lucky enough, we reach a point of our lives when we start coming back to ourselves.
Yes.
My question is, when that happens, we're actually destroying everything that we know, and it might seem our lives are kind of crumbling. In your point of view, what do you stick to? There has to be one point that helps you get through that to the other side.
So let me see if I understood what you shared. So what I thought you said was that in the beginning, we're unaware of any differences. Then we are conditioned in life and we accept these concepts as our own and as us. And then when we begin to awaken to our initial essence, you said things begin to fall apart. And how do we get through that? Is that your question?
Yes.
Good. So, things do not necessarily have to fall apart when this occurs. Initially, it may feel a little bit uneasy. I remember it was 1982. I was having dinner at my parents' home when they were still alive. And I was sitting at dinner, and all of a sudden what came out of my mouth was, I'm going to sell my practice. My father looks at me and he says, what? I said, I'm going to sell my medical practice. And he said, are you crazy? I said, no. And he said, but you spent so many years going to school and spent so much money. I said, I know. And he said, what are you going to do? I said, I feel like I need to share with people what I've discovered. And they're going to pay you for this? And 2 years later, I put my practice up for sale, and 2 years after that, I sold it. And then for 2 years, I didn't do anything. And then a kid that never read. I mean, I knew how to read, but I didn't enjoy reading. Then I wrote my first book. That was like a miracle. And then people were asking me to speak all over the world. And then a second book came, and a third book came, and now the fourth book came. I don't know how this all happened. I could have never imagined that I would be sitting here this evening, 10,000 miles from where I live, and you took time out of your busy lives to come and keep me company for the evening. So, what I'm sharing with you is, when some of these things begin to awaken, initially, things are going to feel very different. You might find that you're in a relationship that you have never actually felt good in, but you've been in it anyway. You may find that the job that you've had for years, you can't stand doing it. But you've been doing it because everyone's doing it. And it takes some time, and then that truth sets us free and begins to put us on a new path. For me, a lot of this began in it began earlier than that, but in the end of 77, early 78, my marriage just dissolved very quickly, like something I wasn't expecting at all. And I had a breakdown, and I spent years emotionally in a great deal of turbulence. I was not well. I was having panic attacks every day, lots of them, for 6.5 years. I look back now and I realize so much of what I'm sharing with you, especially the softness of my heart, is from going through those experiences. So yes, life sometimes pushes our head under the water, and we think we're going to die because it's hard to breathe. But we don't die very easily. And our lungs learn how to expand tremendously. Just trust the journey of your life. It will take you where you need to be. Yes?
You keep repeating word awakening, and I'm very confused about what does it mean for you, and how do you actually recognize you awaken. So what is awakening? Can you elaborate?
What is the awakening?
Could I just ask you to wait for a microphone next time?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much.
So he said that I have used the word awakening, and it was a little confusing for him, and so he was asking, what is the awakening? The awakening is the realization that there's nothing wrong. That there's nothing to do. That you don't need to be prettier or skinnier or smarter. That we are exactly who we are to be. And when we begin to accept who we are, exactly how we are, the acceptance means that we forget all of our ideas about what's wrong with me or what's wrong with the world. And then we are guided by a deeper intelligence. Most of the time when we meet other people, we don't actually meet them. We meet who they think they're supposed to be. And they meet who we think we're supposed to be. Something very beautiful happens when each of us is naked, meaning the facade, all the ideas are gone. You know how if you have a boyfriend or a girlfriend or a husband or wife, sometimes you want them to act differently than they are? You've had this before, yes? Try to imagine the possibility of being with someone that you love just the way they are. In fact, you love aspects of them that they don't love, but you love it so much that after a while they begin to love it too. So the awakening is just an unconditional acceptance of life. We accept things as it is. And that doesn't mean that we see injustice and don't do anything. When we accept things as it is, each of us will discover who we are in the world. For instance, some of you may be very political. Others of you have no interest in that. But maybe something else is of interest to you. Some, they want to save the whales or save the forest. Others, they have a different thing that's calling them. When we accept who we are, we will naturally be taken in the direction we need to go. Whether it is to walk in the street with a sign because we want the government to change, or maybe we are working with one person at a time. Each of us has a different job. So the awakening is just an acceptance of who we are and how we are in each moment. Yes? I'm so grateful for all your questions, by the way. They're wonderful questions.
You also mentioned about your improved eyesight. I wasn't sure if it was about your improved eyesight.
Improving eyesight, yes.
Did you mean it, or was it just figure of speech? Because to me, it's just a little touch and moment, because I myself have issues with my eyesight. I have keratoconus, which you probably know of if you've been an eye doctor.
So you have keratoconus?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
And so my question basically is, do you mean it? And if so, what do you do? Or could you talk a little more about it?
Sure. Do you wear contacts?
No.
Did you ever wear contacts?
Yes, but usually I had surgery and they implanted these little rings to my eye. So
you had corneal transplants?
No, not transplant. Just a ring that kind of holds it so it wouldn't get thinner.
I see. Okay. So, are you asking about things that you could do?
Of course.
Yes?
Yes.
I don't know exactly what your situation is. Are your glasses very, very strong?
I wouldn't say they're strong, but the issue is that mostly I don't see clear.
Without
even
them?
Even with my eyeglasses, because they just can't correct my eyes. So I see a little blurry all the time.
How does that feel for you?
Well, of course I like it. Most of all, for example, when I don't recognize people on the street from a longer distance, or where I always have to sit in front of, for example, projector or something, because I feel that it's kind of holds me off a little bit.
So, when you don't recognize someone, what does that feel like for you?
Well, basically, I don't recognize them, so it's mostly what they feel about me. For example, but it's not the main issue. It's just, for example, when I drive, I don't see all the signs. Well, I see it, but for example, if there's some sign, it's a little bit hard to read from distance, so I have to come closer to it, etc.
So let's go back to the prior thing. So you don't notice someone, and then you wonder how they feel about you because you didn't see them, right?
Yeah.
Yeah? Has that happened to you?
Kind of often, yeah.
Yes? And so what did you do when that happened?
Well, I explained it, for example, that I didn't see them.
And what did they say?
It's hard to say. I wouldn't say that they got mad, but...
In other words, when you shared with them about your visual condition, did they get upset or something, or?
Not at all, no.
What happened with them? Because, see, what I find is that when we share with people what's actually happening in our life, all that sense of embarrassment begins to dissolve, and actually people come closer to us. So I understand that it's difficult to see street signs, yes? So that means that, yes?
Well, mostly, for example, issues here in university, when I, for example, a lot of times I just don't see what the text is presented.
And where are you sitting in the class?
Well, sometimes even when I sit in the first row, I just don't see it. For example, the text is if the text is really small or so. So it's just, I see it, it's kind of an issue that I'm having. And well, you mentioned about your perfect eyesight. Well, so was it, so that was my question basically, if you meant it, or was it just a figure of speech?
You have a condition that can actually help you to soften. You have something real going on that limits your ability to see some of the things in life that you may need as a student or whatever. Yes? If you can't see the screen or so on. But this also gives you the opportunity to ask for help, which is a very beautiful thing, because most of us spend our whole life trying to pretend that we have everything together. But when we ask someone else for help, we give them an opportunity to do something that makes them feel beautiful. So, what I'm sharing with you is, I don't know precisely what you can do to change your eyesight, but there are many things that you can do to share your insight. And there are many things that you can do that can bring you closer to people and help you to express even more what's going on in your life. When this afternoon, or not this afternoon, but yesterday, I was with Vaclav, the young man that is a friend of mine that put this together. And I said, gee, I had a thought, rather than just doing a presentation, what would be interesting to me is to find out what's important for people, and then I can speak directly about that. So it can be significant for each person. And he said, I don't know if this will go over very well here. I said, why is that? Well, people don't want to speak so much. And so I understand that, because I've done more than 2,000 presentations and many in Europe. Why am I using this example? So maybe in a culture where people do not speak so easily, this gives you an opportunity to open up that place within yourself and to ask for assistance, which gives other people a chance to do something very beautiful, because there's nothing more beautiful than helping each other. And if we cannot see the signs on the road, it causes us to have to drive more carefully, which is actually a very nice thing to do. So what I'm sharing with you is what you have thought of as an obstacle in your life may actually be a beautiful gift. And it may add a great deal to your life. So perhaps when you have those opportunities where maybe you don't see things as clearly, ask for assistance. See how you can take this thing that seems like it's not so good and make it into something that's really, really very good. Does that make some sense to you? I hope it's helpful.
Okay, our time is up.
Okay, go to sleep. Thank you so much. I'm so grateful that you came. You're making me nervous.
Yeah, please go on.
I'm not here to sell anything. Vaclav had gotten some books. This is my new book from a local bookstore. If any of you are interested, they are available. it's just been wonderful to have you here tonight and to have time to discuss these important issues about life. And I love you.
I would just like to add one little thing. When you said that you're from Hawaii, I kind of instantly in my mind just came surfing.
Could you repeat that again?
When you said that you're from Hawaii, what instantly came to my mind is surfing, the waves, and you're a kind of surfer, I guess, you just...
I surf the web. You can surf the waves.
Yeah.
I did that years ago, but...
we can surf the life as well.
Yeah, I do the best I can to surf my life. Stay on top of the waves. Yeah.
So, we wish you nice surfing.
Thank you. And you should visit Hawaii sometime. It's especially the island of Maui. It's, you live in a very beautiful place. And that is also a very beautiful place, but in a very different way. And the people will touch you very deeply. Now you can go home and go to sleep. You're welcome.
And if you don't know what to do next Saturday, tak já už to můžu asi být česky, protože to stejně v češtině, celá ta událost, takže kdo to neumí anglicky, má stejně smůlu s vám.
I made it for the last 5 minutes.
How was the game?
And I scored a winning game.
You
That's why they pay you the fortune.
How many goals did you win by?
Just one.
And you made it? I have to make an announcement.
No.
A quick announcement. This is Vaclav. He put this together along with the Mindfulness Club, and his team, his soccer team, made the the quarterfinals.
Yeah.
And today is his birthday, and he didn't know, should I come, should I go to the game? I said, no, you must go to the game. Of course this is important. And we were on the tram coming here, and I said, don't worry, just have fun, you're going to win tonight. And he won.
Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Vaclav. Happy birthday to you. And all of you. Woo! Just in time.
Yeah.